I think what we're gonna see is a competitive 2 or 3 rounds where Usman makes a great showing of himself. It's gonna be very much back and forth, but with Buckley just slightly getting the better of him in backing rounds. And then sadly for the old legend, I see a late stages KO by like the 4th round. Buckley carries some one-hitter quitter ballistics in those fists. Man can whack. Well, I don't think Usman's chin is totally shot or anything. He only starched the one time 3 years ago. I just feel like he's gonna be a lot slower than his past self in there, and eventually Buckley will find it and explode into something diabolical. There is a very sheer power difference between these two guys. Okay, alright, laugh it up, you carnivores. Soak it all in. Drink it up. Yes, you have to drink this. Drink it. I got my pick for the main event of this weekend's Atlanta card hella wrong. Just embarrassingly wrong. And thus the floodgates were open for a bunch of I told you so's to come rub my nose in it. Yeah, sure. You were all picking old man Usman on a 1.5 year long layoff to beat the surging Buckley, embarking on a career best tear. You all saw it coming, huh? You lying bastards. Okay, but jokes aside, this did not go how I thought it would whatsoever. Kamaru Usman is back! The Nigerian Nightmare drank up all the naysayer sentiment like a vampire and used it as some much needed fuel to inject some life back into his career in the late stage he finds himself in. He spent years hearing people call him washed or doubting that he'd ever come back in full form. Not just me. Hear talk from all corners of the internet about his knees being held together with duct tape and bubble gum. There's no way he'd be able to operate at his best with them holding him back like that. You had Lucas Tracy calling him Wobblestone, Cobblestone Usman. He absorbed all of that and then went in there with a fire in his heart that we haven't seen from him in years. It's cliche to say, but I mean it. This was seriously vintage Usman in there.
You know, I know it's a running joke. Everybody want to get on the internet and talk. Oh, his knees. Well, shut the up. I can still do what I do.
And I'm not just talking his performance against Buckley, but just the energy he carried in the pre-fight media appearances, to the weigh-ins, to facing off against his opponent in the cage. He had every intention of eating this guy alive. Every round played out pretty much the same through the first 4. Buckley would be buzzing around in Usman's face, tossing combinations through his guard, landing some bombs on occasion, and then Kamaru would just time a takedown perfectly and bag the round by controlling him on the ground. And quite easily. As a fan of Buckley, and of course because I picked him to win, it was thoroughly frustrating seeing him have 0 answers for this for the majority of the fight. Fair enough when it happens in the first round and you're thinking you have 0 chance of being submitted, so you can just ride it out and try and put it on in the next couple rounds. But it just happened again and again and again. Buckley would be pretty handily outlanding and outdamaging Usman on the feet, and then just get smushed into the mat and stay there. This was perplexing to watch, to say the least, but I think much of that can be attributed to Usman just knowing exactly where his weight needed to be at all times. Every time Buckley scooted back and could maybe push off the hips or start to build against the cage, Usman would scoop his legs up and drag him back down. Immense skill gap in that department. But Buckley's body language almost read like he knew he wasn't nearly as good as the legend in these murky waters, and probably didn't anticipate being put on his ass as much as he was. But then we get to the 5th round, and this is where things took a turn. All of a sudden, Buckley was switched on. All of a sudden, Kamaru couldn't land a single takedown to save his life. Young Buck was shucking him off left and right and bringing it to him with some nasty combinations. It's like he finally figured out how to fight Usman at the very end, and my ass was sweating bullets. But alas, it wasn't enough. Case in point, Buckley didn't really show up, but Usman certainly did. This man is officially back in the mix. As mentioned in my previous fart-ass video, Usman was already on the cusp of overtaking GSP. I think if he took out Leon Edwards in that rematch, you could probably make that argument given the insane run he was on. He was stopped just short of that at the tail end of the fight, where he was basically handing Leon his ass on a platter for the majority of it. And I personally felt like it going that way was a bit of a confidence hit for the longest time. And maybe it was going into their rubber match, since he was very careful in that one to avoid eating shin bone again, and he lost the decision because of it. And the subsequent long layoff after that Chimaev fight kind of had me wondering if we'd ever see him in there again, period. I was half expecting a Dominic Cruz situation where we'd open up social media to see that he retired without going out in a blaze of glory, like we'd always want. We always want that for these legends. I was very prepared for a sad Instagram post. And if we did see him again, with each passing month of inactivity, I was getting increasingly more and more worried that he'd just be some hungry up-and-comer's lunch. Picturing him against Shavkat, JDM, or Gary, or just about anyone making a splash at 170 right now did not look like a pretty image. So when they announced the Buckley fight, I was like, oh shit, here we go. Like I said in that previous video, book this version of Buckley against Usman from 2022, and I'm picking Usman to rip him apart. A lot of people flaming me in that comment section seemed to think I was doubting Usman's skill set, when in reality I was picturing a young, highly active contender versus kind of an old head on a long layoff. Didn't really seem to have the spark anymore. At least we didn't think so, and I wasn't sure if he'd still have the physicality to pull this off, you know? We just didn't know. Well, here we are. And honestly, I'm doing a complete 180 on the whole layoff thing. Beforehand, I thought of it like him having one foot out the door, looking towards focusing on other avenues like his podcast with Henry Cejudo or whatever. Demetrius Johnson retired last year out of the blue after a 1.5 year long layoff too, so I was picturing something similar. But now, after the fight, I do think that taking a break was a pretty damn good idea, especially hearing him talk about it leading up to the fight.
But, you know, took a year off to really do some of those other things. And I tried to take care of little injuries that were nagging. And yeah, you know, I got to a place where I'm like, you know what? I miss this. It's time to get back in there and and enjoy it again before it's gone, because 10 years went by just like that. So here we are.
He was just always fighting, always active, defending his belt every few months. The burnout must have been an immense weight on his shoulders. So taking that time to decompress and get his head right and kind of enjoy life more clearly did wonders for his confidence. Because even before we saw him go in there and look like prime Usman for those first few rounds, he just carried that level of confidence that was missing. Like, I missed it from the guy. It was like a quiet tenacity bubbling underneath. For the first time in years, he looked like he was starving for that win. He needed this bad. Seeing him get emotional in the Octagon interview and talking about getting that monkey off his back, that was a tearjerker, man. People are gonna think I'm just saying this to save face, but I've genuinely never been more happy to be wrong. It's clear how much this meant to him. Sucks for Buckley, but I don't think this will hold him back too far. If anything, getting pressed into the floor by Kamaru Usman and then figuring out at the end of the fight how to defend against those exchanges will have this guy coming back looking like an absolute monster. This performance may have been questionable, but I think he'll come out of it a world beater. And as for Usman, I love for him to get that title shot next, but I do think it would be kind of insanely unfair for the guys like Shavkat or Sean Brady who have been racking up wins while he was away. People have already called for it, but make the Bilal Muhammad fight. That would be perfect and actually stylistically pretty fun. You know what they say about wrestler versus wrestler matchups. I do think that's a winnable fight for sure, especially if he turns up like he did this weekend. And if he gets past him, if he beats the former champ, give him that next shot for old time's sake. And if he somehow, in the vein of Glover Teixeira, reclaims the belt in his 40s, then GSP, step aside, my friend.